Now, you've used the word infinite in that description. This I can't help but be taken to some of the discussions over origins of the universe, especially as Christianity comes to head with some of the more popular forms of atheism, or maybe we could say naturalism today. Sometimes when these discussions take place, the question comes out, well, why is it that there can't be an infinite regress with, say, a contingent or finite causes? And, of course, in the history of Christian thought, both philosophers and theologians have referred to the Christian God, well, in a variety of ways, but one of them is the first cause as the very being who is necessary and absolute, which is in contrast to, say, someone or something that's contingent. Would you describe for a minute this? How would you respond to those atheistic thinkers who say, well, there can be an infinite regress with something contingent? Well,
I mean, many of them do, and it demonstrates again the conceptual crudity of how they understand the arguments, and it is kind of shocking. You think that a putatively trained philosopher would understand the difference between the claims being made. Many of them think of first cause. Well, first of all, they use the word cause as if it's univocal, as if it's always being used in the same way. And they tend to think of cause as some antecedent physical substance or event which leads to the next. So they think that when people say God is the first cause, or what they mean is that in a temporal succession, he's number one in the sequence of events. Well, that's not what's being claimed. Plenty of Christian thinkers, Thomas Aquinas most conspicuously, said it wouldn't matter if the world were eternal, both into the past and into the future. You would still need a first cause in the sense that we mean. And part of the problem is we use the word cause in that mechanical sense habitually today. That's not actually what causa in medieval scholastic Latin means, or what aetion in ancient Greek means, in which cause there means not an event, a prior physical substance or event. It means the logical condition. It means the logical explanation, that sine qua non, without which something could exist. And that there you cannot have an infinite regress. Conditional reality has to be founded upon an unconditioned source. That is, what we're talking about there is the reason why anything exists at all. The one, sort of popular way, and again, I'm always careful about using the metaphors because the metaphors invariably use physical imagery that's inappropriate at the end of the day. But it's like saying, well, what is it that is turning on the lights in my house? It has to be a source of electricity. And so I said, well, at the moment that the electricity is flowing, there has to be an origin of that electrical charge that's operative. And you say, well, what if there's just an infinite regress of the conditions of the electricity just going on forever and ever and never arriving at a first unconditioned source or a first necessary source? Obviously, you're talking nonsense at that point. And all that the claim of God as first cause is saying is that insofar as things exist in a composite way, their existence is reducible to more and more basic, more and more simple conditions that are necessary for that thing's existence. And that ultimately this will arrive, if logic follows the course that reason dictates, at one unconditioned source that isn't marked by any of the characteristics of contingency, that is, mutability, composite nature, finitude, temporality, and so on and so forth. So anyway, to make a long story short, these are two completely different issues. The person who says, well, why can't there be an infinite regress, is thinking in terms of just a contingent sequence of physical events. Now, I don't think even that's possible. I don't think there could be an infinite regress into the past. I think that if Hilbert and others, of certain mathematicians, are right, that even the possibility of an actual infinite of that sort is unlikely. It's impossible. But let's say it is true. That still wouldn't change the fact that the whole infinite continuum is made up of logically contingent realities, all of which must rest upon an unconditioned ground. And that ground, that source, that infinite reality that in which all things participate or upon which all things rest, that's what traditionally Christianity, Judaism, Islam, all the religions of the world mean when they talk about God as first cause. And it's definitely part of Christian tradition from the very beginning.